This is Working for Progress, a podcast that connects us through conversations about how we craft our working lives and make progress. We'll be joined by our communities from Tribe Porty and Keystone. Tribe Porty is a community co-working space and creative hub. We are full of entrepreneurs, social enterprises, freelancers, charities and SMEs. Keystone is the other social enterprise which supports women to reimagine their working lives. We do this by providing a holistic approach to business through courses, programs, mentoring, group coaching and events.
Welcome to today's conversation. I'm Alice, the community manager at Tribe Porty.
And I'm Dani, founder and director of both Tribe Porty and Keystone.
Here at Working for Progress, we're all about connecting good people, sharing their stories, their challenges, and the progress they make for themselves and for others. We hope this podcast challenges your ways of thinking and inspires you to work for progress.
Working for Progress starts with simple pleasures, finishes in awe, and meanders through career journeys in between.
Today we welcome Rob Hosking. Previously a police officer, he now runs Rides of Happiness, a movement to become happier. Rob is a trained mental health first aider and delivers vulnerable talks about his own mental health journey. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's nice to have someone we don't actually know on the podcast, and thank you for the Tribe Talk this evening.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we are too. Great, so we'll start off with some gentle questions and then we can get into more of why you're doing what you're doing and kind of your journey to today. So warm-up question, what are your 5 simple pleasures?
5 simple pleasures?
Yes.
Oh, right. I love football.
Cool.
So, and I love Formula 1, so I'll say those are the 2. First 2, I just love sports, so it just chills me out completely, and especially when my United win. They don't chill me out when they lose. But yeah, just those 2 kind of things really chill me out. Other simple pleasures like listening to music. I'm such a big fan of just listening to music, putting my headphones in and just put my head down and just getting lost in the music and in the words. So I love doing that. I like, I would say, traveling, but traveling is not really a simple pleasure, is it? That's more of a bigger pleasure. But do new things, and I think that kind of ties in with the last one with just like being spontaneous. Although it leads to different things, the art of being spontaneous, that simple pleasure of just doing something different or in the last minute makes me happy and fills me up. So I like being spontaneous. So I would say that's probably, I think I said 5 there. So I
think you did. They're interesting ones.
Yeah.
They're not the usual coffee and chocolate. You clearly like a bit of action.
Yeah, I do. I do I like keeping busy.
Yeah, sounds like it.
My parents would always say, you're always on the go, always moving about. So I can't really sit still for too long. So
fair enough.
During the podcast, I'll walk away and come back. No,
we'll pause it. It's fine. do what you need to. Oh, that helps us lead to the next question then, kind of around your values. What's your value based, and how does that come into play with what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I'll say 4 core values which I kind of live by. The first one's self-belief. I have such strong confidence in myself because I feel like that's so important for anybody to have in themselves, that inner belief, because there's going to be, and I've had this experience in my life where there's so many people in life that'll tell you what you can't do and potentially not believe in you fully. So you have to have that inner belief in yourself, that when people potentially don't show you that enthusiasm when you've got a new plan or whatever it is, or belief in you, that it doesn't matter as much because you have that inner belief. And so self-belief is so important for me, and I thrive in a culture and an environment which believes in me, but also supports me and my self-belief, that they just get it. And I said that they don't try to put me down with my self-belief. They just, I always say there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And some people's arrogance is other people's just confidence in themselves. And some people may confuse overconfidence with arrogance. But for me, I'm just like, you need to have that strong inner belief, because there's going to be so many things in life that could put you down. The next one would probably be challenge. I need to be challenged in life, professionally, personally. I want to always be better. I always want to be the best version of myself. I can be quite hard on myself. Unfortunately, that can be the negative to that value, but I always want to be challenged, and yet again, I need to be in an environment that challenges me and always keeps you on my toes. So that's definitely one. The next two would probably be, they kind of overlap, but it would be freedom. I love to have the freedom to do what I want when I want to. Obviously, to a certain degree, I still have to do the dishes and the housework, but I love having the freedom. I don't like being dictated to by others of like, this is how your day is going to look. And then we've already touched on the first one a little bit, but spontaneity. Such a spontaneous person where I love not having tons of plans in the future, because I just love being able to, I don't know how I'm going to be what I'm going to be like in a couple of months on that exact day. So I'm like, well, let's just plan it on the day and see how I feel. It's not great for dinner reservations at like the weekends and stuff, but that's just something I have to live with.
So that sounds good. I'm trying to figure out how that informs how you're working now. That must inform how you're working now quite a lot. So can you tell us more about what you're working on just now with Rise of Happiness?
Yeah, so we've created Rise of Happiness, and it's obviously it's a movement to become happier, and within that we publish free wellbeing magazines for people, and it's on the back, and I'll touch on about my story in general, but it's on the back of wanting just to give back to society. And we believe there's a market there where people need more happiness in their lives, and that happiness looks and can be broken down into so many different ways. That can look at like mental health, just being the best version of yourself, talking about one of the values there, being the best version of yourself, challenging yourself daily. All these different aspects come into how we create the magazine and what our values and purpose and goal is for the mission of Rise of Happiness and the magazine itself. So we want to always promote these values I've mentioned, and because they're our own values, they're a lot easier to promote because you're living by your values and how you work, and so you're just trying to spread your own knowledge and values to other people because you think, well, this will be a benefit to everybody. And happiness is such a complex word and topic, but the whole point is happiness means something different to every single person, and that's the kind of thing we want to promote, especially because although it might be easy to say, of course it's obvious happiness means something different to everybody, but there's still society influence and expectations that a lot of people follow, that I don't think they might think, oh, of course happiness means something different, but do they actually get it? Do they actually understand it fully, and do they live by it? So those core values of mine and my business partner and my partner Keegan, our values are etched into Rise of Happiness and what we want to promote, so it all kind of ties in perfectly, which is great.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe we'll get on to your worst or most random job, or maybe it's way back, but I'd love to hear kind of as your career journey is to date.
To be honest with you, I've had jobs that I've not had tons of jobs. I've kind of been in a job for a few years, so I've never had a really bad job until the police force, when I joined the police, and that was in 2015. So the little jobs when I was younger and stuff, actually they were really good jobs. I really loved them. I worked in a bookies, and because I love sport, working in a bookies was perfect for me. I was getting paid to watch football, and I loved that. And I worked in a cafe before, and it was good. It wasn't bad, but the police did change my perception on life in general and everything about it. And I would say it was probably of all the jobs I've had, has to go down as my worst job. Not to criticize the police force in any way, because everyone will have a different experience in the police force, but for me and my experience and my career experience, I have to say that unfortunately that doesn't meet the standard, and it probably would have been my worst one. And it's probably, I would have to say it's my worst one because of how it deeply affected me. And it affected me mentally over the 5 years so much, and my mental health did have a significant deterioration, and there were so many ups and downs within the police where you were seeing the worst in humanity daily. You were seeing death almost daily, and those kind of things stick in your mind. And someone said to me, I heard someone say a few weeks ago that there's no such thing as work-life balance, it's just life. And when you think of what the career, the police force represents, and so much of the negativity that you experience in that job, you can see why it's probably my worst job, because very hard to switch that switch and be positive after a horrible day. So I would probably have to say that was been my worst job, but just because not the job itself and what you do, the effects of the job and how it affected me personally.
And what made you join the police department?
It's a good question. I think this is where rise to happiness and the core values come into it, because I've been there following society expectations. Society's expectations of the police force: great job, great career progression, a good pension, exciting stuff, exhilarating, whatever. My family were either army or police. So yet again, I had that influence of, well, you might end up in something like that, and that influence. And me and my brother actually joined at the exact same time. So he was going through the process and he said to me, oh, I'm doing this, and it kind of piqued my interest. And I was in my last year studying history and then went to the police. It's not really the normal thing to do, but I was studying history and that was my passion. I love history, and I was in my last year, and at the back of your mind you start thinking, because I never wanted to be a historian or I never wanted to be a history teacher. I just loved history, so I wanted to study it. So in my last year I was like, in the back of your mind you're thinking, what am I going to do in my life after uni? And I was working in the bookies, but I was like, that's a part-time job, what am I going to do next? And it came up, and my brother was joining, and he was like, oh, you should have a look at it. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up joining, and before I knew it, I was in the police college, and passing the exams, and then having my first shift. And sometimes I look back and think, wow, that really was a whirlwind. And I left uni, actually. I only had 6 months left, but I thought, I've got a career here, so, and I didn't want to become a historian or anything. I just loved history, so I was like, I'll just go with the flow of this. And looking back, I would have done things differently, but I also believe everything was meant to happen in life, so it had to happen. Unfortunately, sometimes I think, but no, it had to happen, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. Never a passion of mine. Never grew up thinking I'm going to be a policeman when I grow up. I never wanted to do it, especially growing up in Northern Ireland. Very different to how policing is in the mainland. So, police officers are targeted massively in Northern Ireland, where you can't leave your house without checking your car to see if there's a car bomb. And I remember when I was in the police in Scotland, they'd say to me, anytime I'd visited Belfast, they'd be like, right, you'll need to check in with Special Branch to make sure it's safe, and make sure you don't tell anybody you're in the police when you go back home. So it was never a job that, growing up with that view of the police, I was never thinking, this is the job I want to do. But life happens, and as I said, society expectations plus family influence, I ended up joining it. So that was that.
I'm going to ask you why you left, but maybe that's the next question. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Yeah, that you're completely right. That was the biggest risk. It was very easy, and it could have been very easy for me to have stayed in that job for the rest of my police career, my working career. So many people had done it, and I was surrounded by so many people who were negative and didn't enjoy the job, but were still in it because they're like, 5 years left, 10 years left, or whatever. And there was there was one time where it just changed my perception of risk and life in general, and that was my last ever shift. And in the morning I witnessed a young male take his own life, and I was there with him when he took his last breaths in this world. It was a very difficult thing to watch, but unfortunately I'd watched it all too often. But 5 hours later, my colleague had a heart attack on shift and died.
Oh my goodness.
And those two traumatic events on that one shift just it was an awakening for me, and it turned my life completely around. I always say now, it was the worst day of my life, and worst day of my professional life, worst day of my personal life up to this point. But now it's turned out to be one of the best days, because it's allowed me to change. And my colleague had 29 years service. He had 1 year left to retirement. Oh. And he would tell me about his plans that he wanted to do in the future. So I realised a positive risk, and a calculated risk is choosing my happiness, and I wasn't happy. And when you actually think about that, And you actually think, so Rob, you left the police because you weren't happy. Doesn't actually sound like much of a risk, does it? But and when you're in that moment, and when you've got that job and the career, which could span 30 years and good pension, whatever, it was obviously a risk because
absolutely
it was just a massive risk. But I just knew that happiness had to come first, and my mental health had to.
How aware were you of your own unhappiness up until that last day? Like, were you aware of? Did you have signs in your body that you weren't happy? Were you aware that being unhappy was normalized if your colleagues weren't happy? Like, how aware were you at that point?
I completely agree with that. I think unhappiness was completely normalized. I have so many people who are like, oh, that's just the way it is, or it's whatever decisions happen, it's like, oh, that's awful, but we just have to deal with it. But they like to moan about it, and if you're moaning about stuff, someone said once that you're allowed to moan about something 2 times or 3 times, and then you have to stop and change it. But people in the police love that. I don't know why. I say people in the police, I generalize obviously, but a lot of people in police, and the people who I was surrounded with, they love to moan about it because it wasn't a great working culture.
I mean, I think that's true in lots of cultures where things aren't great systematically, and then you are stuck in the normalization of it, and then all you can do is moan about it, and then it's just like this circle of moaning that nothing ever changes. It's not very healthy.
And when everyone's doing it, it's almost like to fit in, you have to moan too, and be unhappy. So to answer your question, I was very aware of my unhappiness, and it reached a point in 2018 where I actually wanted to take my own life because I was so deeply unhappy at my own life. I wasn't fed up of living. I was just fed up of living my life. And I felt so trapped, and I felt like there was no escape. And I deliver talks and all about mental health now, and I say there's 3 things that you need to do whenever you're struggling with your mental health, and there's 3 stages, and it's notice it, accept it, and then heal it. I noticed that I was sad, and I noticed that I was very unhappy, and I was depressed. But it took a while to get to the acceptance stage. It took a while for me to actually get to that point where I accepted to myself that I'm actually depressed. So although I noticed your question about did you notice your unhappiness, I noticed I was unhappy, but I hadn't accepted it to myself where I was like, I need help, and that unhappiness isn't going to go away by itself. And my mum visited me once, and she said, Rob, you're not happy. And I was like, I'm fine. She's like, no, Rob, you're not happy. You know what they say about mums, they always know. And I was like, no, I'm fine. And that was it. That wasn't long before I tried to take my own life. I hadn't accepted it, therefore I wasn't able to talk about it to my mum. And for me, my mum would be the person who I would tell anything to, the least judgmental person ever. She would help me through everything. But I hadn't got to that acceptance stage. And they say research has shown that people who accept their emotions, both positive and negative, are generally more happier than people who suppress them. That's because the people who accept them can work through them and process them. But the people who suppress them end up remaining in a negative state of mind. And I was at that stage where I was suppressing. I knew I was sad. I knew I was unhappy, but I was suppressing it. I was remaining in that negative state, which was not helping anybody. But I just hadn't got to that next stage of the acceptance.
And what did that, because that's a really interesting point, and I'm not sure people are very aware of that distinction of what did that acceptance look like for you then?
I think the acceptance, it took a while, but I think it was, you need to have good people around you. I always believe that, having people where you actually feel comfortable to open up about, and the police, look, it was a job where you're telling people the worst news of their lives, potentially. You're telling loved ones that their loved one's never going to come home again, delivering death messages and stuff. So you have to have that element of professionalism, and also quite hardened to your emotions, because you don't want to break down in tears telling somebody their loved one's not coming back. But then it's twofold, and you think that hardness can't affect your personal life, where then you don't accept your emotions. And when you're in an environment where people aren't accepting their emotions and are just throwing it to the back and be like, oh, it's fine, it's very difficult to get to that stage. So I think for me, I'm trying to think when, I can't even pinpoint when I did accept. I'm a very reflective person anyway, so I think I was just trying to convince myself that it's fine, I'll get better naturally or something like that. And I think it was probably, if I'm honest with you, whenever that last shift happened, my mental health actually, like, it manifested itself in a physical injury where my knee, like, I ended up tearing my ACL in my knee. I hadn't done anything to my knee. So my mental health affected my knee, and my mental health told me I need to stop. So I took 5 months away from the police on sick leave because I could barely walk for the next 5 months. And that was probably my moment to reflect and to be like, I'm actually in a lot more trouble than I probably realised, that I actually need to accept it, because I would never have talked to a counsellor before then during those 5 months. And when I left that culture of the police, I was then able to, I saw a counsellor. I suffered from PTSD symptoms, so that all kind of came to me when I was away from the police, because I wasn't having the culture of people around me being hardened. And not everybody, because there will be some people who you can talk to in the police and will be very good, but in my experience personally, that was a rarity rather than a norm. And some people in the police would maybe say something about a mental health call that we'd just been at, and then maybe make a wee comment, whether it's a joke or whatever. But then I'm looking at it and I think, right, well, I now know I can't open up about mine if that's how you're fearing something else like that. So my awakening and being able to accept that acceptance stage probably didn't actually come until after the police, although I realised I was unhappy, but that acceptance stage probably didn't come until after, like, removing yourself from that culture.
Isn't our body's amazing as well? Like, your body's like, actually, you're not listening, I'm going to take you out.
I know. It's like,
you're done. You're not going to walk, thank you.
Honestly, like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it that, tearing your ACL, that is an injury. That's an impact injury. You're playing squash, you're playing football, and you turn. And I had done that about 2 years before, and although I hadn't tore it, I twisted my knee and I hurt it. So it was obviously a weak point. So my mind thought, where's a week point? Where can I get him?
Where can I get you?
And they got me on my knee, and it literally, it immobilized me. And I said I struggled. Some days I could not even put any pressure on my knee, and I couldn't walk. And the pain that I was in for that 5 months was like excruciating. Like, some days it was horrendous. But it was because mentally I was unwell.
Yeah, and maybe you needed that level of reminder of, like, actually, you're not okay, like, you need to stop.
Exactly. And when I started looking after that, all of a sudden my knees started getting better. And I even find now sometimes, because happiness, in general, we're not saying everybody has to be happy every single day, because that's not how happiness works. You can still be unhappy, but be happy. I'm sorry, have unhappy moments, but be happy. And when I have some unhappy moments, or like really stressed, all of a sudden I'll be like, my knee's sore today.
Do you say thank you? I appreciate that. I got it.
Yeah. And it does. And the first thing, and my partner will say, she's like, what's wrong? If I'm saying my knee's sore today, she's like, well, what's wrong then? I love that. So, and then I have to then reflect and think, what is wrong?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Like, so yeah, the body is amazing, and your mind is so powerful, and I'm so glad it took me away from that, because I may not be here today if it wasn't for that.
Absolutely. Wow. So interesting to hear. I guess I kind of don't want to ask the next question, because I want to ask more about what you're doing now, and the way that you're doing it, and your plans for bringing your experiences and knowledge and what you've learned, and how you want to make change in the world.
Yeah, so the magazine, obviously the magazine's just the start. The Rise to Happiness is a movement, and it will grow. Who knows what it'll grow to, but whether it's retreats or journals or anything to do with mental health and well-being, it can be so expansive. But at the minute, for the magazine, which we want to keep growing to, the magazine's a great tool for people to share their stories with us, where we contact people to share their stories, open up about their own mental health struggles, or their own journey to happiness. And you get some incredible inspirational stories where people have, against all odds, achieved amazing feats in their life. And it's truly humbling that people can share these stories with us. So the magazine is broken up into certain wee bits where we have the inspirational story section where people are sharing those inspirational stories and they're being vulnerable to us. Then we've got like the expert in like, you know, nutrition or whatever it is, mental health, whatever, and they give tips to be happier and mental health tips or whatever it is that they're specializing in. They give tips, and they also give, you know, we look into research and happiness and stuff. So we've got, and then we do like vegetarian recipes and stuff. So we're nurturing the body, mind, and soul within the magazine, because without all three being nurtured, you know, you can't fully be 100% happy in your life, because you need them all nurtured. And for us, the magazine, for the stories, we want people, and we don't interview them, we don't write it, because it's so important for us that they share their story in their words. I've been there where people have maybe, you know, put my story in a magazine or something. I'm like, oh, that's not exactly how I.
That's not the title I
I
said.
phrased it like that. So we want people to share all of their stories in their words, because it makes it raw, it makes it authentic, and it just shows the vulnerability a lot more. So people reading it, no matter what journey you're on, seeing people open up so bravely about their mental health, it can only help, and it can only continue to break down that stigma around mental health in society. Then it also just breaks down that stigma of well-being and happiness in society. But I said, these stories, which are so incredible, and they range from so many different topics. So we want to just, our mission really is just to keep doing what we're doing with the magazine, to grow up to so many different avenues where people are getting those raw stories, getting some inspiration, finding tips whenever they need the tips, and, you know, they can read that in the magazine. The magazine has so many different elements to it that I always say that there's going to be something there for somebody. Personally, I feel like the stigma surrounding men and mental health is still present, and we need to do more to do with that. And, you know, we had a professional ice hockey player, talking about the importance of being vulnerable, and that was so beautiful, because you thought someone who's quite, you know, on paper, macho job, you know, like ice hockey, you know, getting into fights left, right and centre on the ice and stuff, and that kind of job. But then this other side to him where he's talking about his mental health and the importance of men being vulnerable, not just men, you know, people in general, but, you know, seeing a man do it is very inspiring for other men to be like, oh, if he can do it, we can do it too. Because I feel like, although we're getting better, men especially, women too, but men especially have that stigma still attached to it, which is a shame.
I was going to ask that, if you had a focus on men, and I was thinking, I suppose, dominant kind of industries, even like police force, construction, there's really high rates of suicide in those industries, and I just wondered if you were focusing on those yourself. Or
yeah, definitely. And, you know, I give talks and about my story, and a man's story, it's my story, so hopefully that people can, you know, look into it and look at and take some tips from my own story, because I am trying to break down that stigma specifically around men, because, well, I've got the lived experience of it. I'm here to tell the tale, so I want to keep telling these people, whether it's, you know, the police force or whatever, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and, you know, we need to be open about mental health, we need to talk about it, and it's the best way to be, the best way to have your culture, your working culture, whether it's construction, policing, whatever it is. And it's not just obviously men and women, but yeah, so giving talks to these companies, I think, is so important.
Do you still work with the police a bit, or?
No, I don't. No, I've not went back there. No, I don't at the minute. I have reached out to them to see if they would be interested in the magazine and stuff. So
interesting.
To date, I'm still waiting for that response. So
got a ways to go, don't we?
Yes, exactly. And that's where sometimes I'm surprised that, you know, we need to be more than just a tick box exercise. Oh, we've asked somebody about their mental health once every 6 months. That's not enough. And for me, in the police, I've got the experience of what they did for mental health. For me, was not enough. Yeah. So you can't. It's not a tick box. We're dealing with real people, real humans, and real emotions. More needs to be done in all aspects of life. But for me personally, with my experience in the police, especially that aspect, more needs to be done.
It's still very taboo, isn't it, to talk about your mental health?
Yes, I would say so. And although, there may be some people out there who will say they can, and they're in an environment and that they can speak about their mental health, and they've got a good team around them, whether it's police or whatever, my opinion is it's still a rarity rather than the norm.
Yeah.
And whether it's whatever working culture you're in, I still think it's not the norm. That's not the set precedent like at the minute, and that's what we need to get it to. It needs to be the rarity that
you don't
have
talk
a
about
good,
it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so we need to flip that stuff.
Yeah, we all have a lot of work too, don't we?
Definitely.
We have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Just to end with, I'd love to hear about a personal experience where you experienced awe or you're in a state of flow.
I'm quite thankful where I can have quite a lot of states of flow where, especially with, I think it's probably because I'm doing something that I love, that once I get my head into hours and hours can go by and I look up, I'm like, oh, I forgot to eat. I need to eat.
That's flow.
Yeah. So, and Katie, my partner, will be like, she'll dangle a banana in front of me and be like, you're like, come on, you need to eat. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. So, I do have good flow states, but an experience where I had this awe, I have to go back to, I travelled around New Zealand, and I remember going to Hobbiton and seeing the whole setup, and I remember just standing up at the top looking down. I was standing at Bag End and looking down at the whole setup, and I was in complete awe. Everything about it, I just think they got what the movies meant to people, and for me the movies meant everything. And I grew up with Lord of the Rings and got about 3 tattoos about Lord of the Rings. So I do, and
I love it.
And I just thought, what incredible for people to get it, and they're not just about the money. I just thought that whole family feel and the togetherness whenever I was standing in Hobbiton, and all these little things that were, no stone was left overturned.
Yeah. No, I'm confused.
Yeah. So, but like everything was perfect. Everything had a purpose.
I think that is that it. It's like it's the attention to detail, the beauty of the artistry.
That's exactly it, and I just love that, because I feel like in this day and age, I think for a lot of people maybe want cut corners. They want a quick buck, and they can maybe cut corners to get it. And for them, everything had to be perfect. And for that, I just think, what more inspiration and awe-inspiring moment can you be in, to be in an environment where they had their money, they didn't have to do all this and keep doing it, because people are going to come no matter what, but they care. I just love that they care about it. That's the thing that I love about it.
That sounds like love.
Yes, exactly.
Is that what it
That's
is?
it. 100%. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you so much to Rob for joining us today. You can find out more about Rob by following the links in our bio. To hear more about Tribe Porty and Keystone, you can find us on all social media platforms. Please head over to our website and subscribe to our newsletters, which includes monthly blogs to provide helpful insights into how we craft our work and lives. This has been Working for Progress. We hope you join us again.